Does everybody know the Autumn Years books? Can I get a thumbs up? Is there anybody who does not know the books? Okay, well, Barbara, Bettina. Oh yeah, okay, Harald. Hey, okay, that's an excellent start. Because if you don't know the books, the next bit will be a bit unfortunate. So, in that case, we can. So. You're welcome. So here they are, the new workbooks as prepared by Bill. So the idea with these workbooks is really for the students to be able to practice at home across the whole week what they did in class. It's also to give the students the confidence outside of the classroom to use and practice English. We've all been there. In the classroom, everything makes perfect sense, and then you go home and think, what was that? It's also an opportunity for you as the teachers to see what the students actually understood. You can get feedback, oh, I struggled with this exercise, or this was really easy, and so on and so forth. And for a lot of the students, it's a bit sad, but it is actually just something for them to do. A lot of them do get lonely at home. We had actually been wanting to do these style of homework workbooks for a while, but it wasn't until lockdown that we actually had the time and the urgent necessity to do them. So I suppose everything has a silver lining somewhere. And of course, the best way to learn is to do a little bit every day. So as you can see, this is what they look like. The covers have the traditional bell livery. On the inside, there are tips on how to learn. And also, we have the information on where the answer sheets are. Quite important. There is no index or table of contents. We just go straight into the main event. Double page spreads. As you can see, each double page spread in the workbook corresponds to a double page spread in the course book. So
Helen, darf ich ganz kurz reingehen? Ich habe eine Frage an dich. Ich sehe deine Präsentation jetzt nicht gerade. Bist du schon drin?
Ja, okay.
Weil ich sehe dich und die Muppets.
Okay, then one moment. Let's see.
Karin, Beate, vielleicht könnt ihr mal kurz ein Feedback geben. Seht ihr die Präsentation oder auch nur Helen? Jetzt kommt eine Präsentation.
Jetzt sehe ich es auch. Also ich habe es bis jetzt auch nicht gesehen.
Okay, ich dachte, es wäre die Einführung. Jetzt sehe ich hier auch einen Daumen. Wunderbar. Helen, entschuldige die Unterbrechung, aber jetzt sehen wir, was du siehst.
Das ist ganz gut, weil Präsentation ohne Bild ist ein bisschen sinnlos, muss man sagen.
Obwohl du mit den Muppets ist prima. Aber
kann man nicht leugnen. Okay, dann mache ich ganz schnell im Galopp hier.
Ja,
so.
Und das Bild ist jetzt sehr groß, was ich sehe. Ich hatte es mal gesehen, da war es etwas kleiner. Das ist jetzt ein sehr... Es ist ein sehr vergrößerter Ausschnitt jetzt von den Büchern.
Gut.
Vorhin. Ja, okay. Nur für dich zur Information. Jetzt auch sehe ich nur einen Ausschnitt von dem Buch.
Okay. Also seht ihr alle 4 Bücher?
Ja, aber nur den unteren Rand. Karin, kannst du die Bücher komplett sehen?
So ein bisschen ist unten abgeschnitten,
jetzt
aber
wird
nicht
hochgescrollt. Jetzt sehe ich erst oben Helen Tate-Worch. Jetzt den oberen Rand. Also es kommt mir persönlich so, wir hatten es vorher, also ich sehe einen Ausschnitt vom Bild, aber nicht das ganze Bild, Helen.
Okay. Naja, Hauptsache man kann in der Mitte sehen. Also solange alles halt da ist nicht so tragisch. Okay, so that's what the books look like. Here on the inside, you can see tips for learning. This is where you can find the downloads for the answer sheets. This is a typical double page spread. This one I think is from Autumn Years 2 or 3. And then, as you can see, here you have the double page spread in the course book that you use in class, and this is the workbook that you use at home. And most of the exercises have an exercise that then corresponds to an exercise in the workbook. Not always, but very often there is a one-to-one on the exercises for practice. So there is also always a vocabulary of the week box, and what I call a more traditional style of exercise, which focuses on a particular grammar point, usually. There are also always references to the chapter and page, so if you need to look up the rules again, you can. And in the later books, in fact, as you can see here, the orange background of the number tells you that it's referring to Autumn Years 1, in this case, page 62, lesson 15. Okay, so the other exercises really are in the same style to a certain extent as the course books, requiring the students to recall and use vocabulary, play with the language, or in the later books do more in the way of comprehension. So you have everything from fill the gaps to match the words to what is this to true or false, write your own sentences, all the classic teaching methods. As I said, there is an answer sheet, but of course any of the creative exercises, you will have to check the answers yourself. Just be careful not to end up in a situation where over half the lesson is then just spent on checking the homework. The idea is for the students to really be independent. At the end of the book, there is always a what can you remember section, which summarizes each chapter. The students are asked to provide their own summary. And then there is a what do you think will happen in the next book? So the students have a link to the next book in the series. There are also language games and a vocab Sudoku. The answers are, of course, also on the answer sheets. So in general, in summary, these books are for the students to work independently at home a little bit every day, and for you to get feedback on what is or what is not actually going in. So if we look at each book a bit more closely, book 1. As you know, obviously at the beginning, when you start learning a new language, you need a lot of repetition. This is why the first exercise always is based on the opening dialogue for each chapter in the course book. It helps the students get used to the flow and rhythm of the language and to think about which types of words could fill the gaps. In the first chapters, maybe not so much, but later on, students won't need to rely on memory. But we'll be able to work out, okay, I need a verb at this point, or a question word, or whatever, and then can pick out the correct word from the options more quickly. Book 1 also has a lot of exercises that look like the game Hangman. Isn't. It's just fill in the missing letters. And the idea is not to practice the alphabet, at least not directly. It's to help recognize words. English is kind of notorious for its spelling. I have ranted about this before. It's your own fault. All you invaders from Scandinavia and from the mainland should have stayed at home and left your languages away from our island, but you didn't, so it's your own fault. However, for a beginner, especially German speakers who are used to the WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get system, you're suddenly faced with the word to. I mean, what's a W doing in the middle of there? Or the number 8. I mean, what is going on with this whole GHT thing? As such, it doesn't matter. The idea is for the students to get used to the shape and the picture of the words. The books at Bell, we prefer students to concentrate on communication and less on spelling. But the idea is for them to get used to the fact that English is a foreign language and to take away that fear. If you get used to practicing it, then it's not so foreign anymore. As you can see at the bottom of the page, there are page numbers. Any exercise in a double page spread only refers to the double page spread in the original course book. Okay, so it's always a direct link. And the same as in the coursebook, here you can see the instructions are still in German. I think it's around chapter 10, they switch to English. We do that in the homework books as well. So for you, the teacher, the book will actually seem quite repetitive, and it is, but that's the point. A lot of students, especially older students, can be very nervous about even joining an English class, and they need this support and repetition. And it means that, especially for the nervous Nellies, they can practice at home without feeling any pressure. Oh, my classmates are faster and better, and oh, maybe this was a bad idea, and oh, I wish I hadn't come, and poof. This is a very gentle and nurturing book, so they don't need to feel any pressure, so they can relax while they get used to their new classmates. So, if we have a look here as an example, there's your fill in the gaps. If you all switch on your microphones now, do you know what all these things are called? Can you give me the answers?
Melon.
Hooray!
Apple.
Very good.
Raspberry.
Yay!
Pineapple.
Pineapple, yeah.
Cauliflower. Potatoes.
Cauliflower, yeah. What are they? What are these things?
Fruit.
Vegetables.
Fruit and vegetables, yeah. Okay, so you all seem to have your basic fruit and vegetable vocabulary. Well done. Okay, so you can all mute again now. And we'll move on to book 2. So, again, there is a lot of repetition. Book 2, the course book, has a lot of repetition. It incorporates then and builds on book 1, and then we repeat everything again in the workbook. But that's okay. They need repetition, and especially those of you who manage to follow an academic year, it's not a bad thing after the summer break to be able to come in and use the workbook as well and have more and more repetition and get the juices flowing. In book 2, in addition to all the usual exercises, we have the Pearl of Wisdom that you normally find at the end of each chapter, and the students get to try and put it back into the right order. Who knows, they might find better pearls of wisdom by accident. Book 2 also has a very big emphasis on question words and questions in general. Questions are a perennial pain in the, pardon my French, but they need the practice, but it does mean that there are more questions and exercises where you need to check the answers. Let's have a quick go with the Pearls of Wisdom. Here's an exercise at the back of the book. If you'd like to unmute again, maybe you can try filling in some of the gaps here. So, no news is what?
Good news.
Uh-huh. If you want a friend, be a?
Friend.
Be a friend.
Uh-huh. Okay. You are never too old to what?
Party.
Yay! Finally, a fun answer. Hooray.
Learn.
You don't have to, Bell is always about having fun. Yes, there are correct answers. Officially, you are never too old to learn. But if they have fun answers like you are never too old to party, go with it. Use it. Why not? Have fun with the vocabulary. Okay, good and quickly, seldom. Ooh. Well, in that case, I recommend you buy Autumn Years book 2 and find out the answer. Okay, you can all mute again now, and we will move on to book 3. In book 3, there's far more in the way of tenses. Books 1 and 2 covered present continuous, simple present, and simple past. Now there's also present perfect, and this is generally in class when the whole thing explodes into confusion. For this reason, a lot of the grammar exercises do focus on the tenses, not only, but also. And very often we have 2 tenses in one exercise for comparison. An exercise can be quite easy if you know that every verb has to take the ing form. Well, if you then have to make a decision, you need to think about what you're using. So it's a little bit trickier, but it's also excellent for building up your verb vocabulary and not just the usual suspects of go and bring and want. Here you can have far more variety. Book 3 also has at the end of each chapter a riddle. I have added new ones into the book, in the course book, into the workbook. The answers are on the answer sheet, but maybe students will find other ones. Consider this, I will ask at the end, what becomes wetter the more it dries? What becomes wetter the more it dries? You have about 5 or 10 minutes to consider this, and then I will ask you for your answers. Okay. There's a lot of comprehension exercises in this book as well, and a lot of creative exercises. Here we have an example. If you can see at the top here, in the course book, Wolfgang bumps into a fortune teller, and she tells his fortune by reading his palm. So here we have a selection of palms, and there is something in them, and it's all open to interpretation. You can do whatever you want. So unmute, please. What do you think, for example, is in this person's future? Those are strawberries for those who maybe have smaller screens and can't see so well. So what is in this person's future with the strawberries in their hands? Ooh, silence.
I see preparing marmalade.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good answer. I had fruit salad in my head, but marmalade or jam is just as good.
Oh, jam, yeah.
Oh, jam, yeah.
Strawberry cake.
Strawberry cake, yeah. Okay, now I was quite mean to you because I have just put you on the spot and said, give me an answer. And as the first 5 seconds proved, while I sweated and wondered if anyone had heard me, you were struggling to think of an answer. These are books to work from at home. The students have all week to think about it, to come back to it, to put it down, to have an idea, so that when they're in the classroom, they don't need to panic. They get used to this idea of finding answers, of thinking, not just following an exercise with given answers, okay? Okay, so if you can all mute yourselves again. And we will move on to book 3.5. For those of you who maybe have not got that far yet, book 3.5 deals with a lot of realistic travel situations. So the characters are out and about in the States and encounter all kinds of people and circumstances. the students are also frequently asked in the course book to consider, what would you do if? We do this again in the workbook. There's a lot of practice based on the students considering their options. So they have time to contemplate at home, okay, what would I do if my passport had run out, for example, was not valid? What would I do? And they've got all week to think about what would they do and to consider, what would I actually say? How can I express my problem? Okay. In book 3.5, you also have questions based on the short biographies at the end of each chapter. And very often the questions are not in the order that the information appears in the text. So the students really do need to read all of it, understand it, really comprehend what's going on, and then they can answer. So just a little comprehension at regular intervals. So here we have another example of creativity. Feel free to unmute. This is, what should you not do if you are frightened of? So for example, if you are frightened of spiders, what is the one thing you should not do? Any suggestions?
Go to the cellar.
Yep. Anything else?
Go to the attic.
Okay, yeah, I see a theme coming here. Okay, what should you not do if you are scared of flying?
Book a flight.
Yep. Okay, those ones are quite simple to answer. If you're scared of flying, don't get on a plane. You need to think a little bit more. If you're scared or frightened of big dogs, what should you not do? This will require a little bit more thought, but I'm sure you will get some very creative answers. Okay, so feel free to mute yourselves again. And we will move on to the final book in the series. Yeah, as you can see, we're just putting the finishing touches to this one. Hopefully it will be going off to the printers maybe this week or next week, in the coming week or so. Again, book 4 is a practical book. It doesn't look so much at what would you do, but how would you do it? It also puts a lot of emphasis on small talk, and this is quite difficult to practice in a book because you're writing, not speaking. I mean, it's quite obvious, really. Thinking about it, we worked out that very often talking is not the problem itself, it's actually getting started. I mean, who hasn't sat at some point in a really awkward silence, desperately trying to think of something to say? So we have exercises which actually ask the students to consider this very problem. And the students have time to sit at home and think about it. So, for example, you can have general thoughts. What could you say, for example, about football or about food? How could you start a conversation on these topics? And then we have specific use. Okay, you've thought about it. What would you do? What would you say, sorry, if you saw one of these things? The students have all week to think about it. You do not, so unmute. And what would you say, for example, to someone if you saw this cat with those eyes walking around? What would you say? What could you say?
Hier hat jemand eine Idee, was ihr da sagen würdet, wenn ihr ich glaube, diese Katze hat zweifarbige Augen.
Yep, sorry, if the picture's too small, that's one green eye and one blue and green eye.
What a strange cat.
Okay.
Did you see the scary cat around the corner?
Scary. Why not? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Unique cat.
Very nice. Very nice.
Beautiful cat.
I have a friend who has 2 different colored eyes.
Oh, excellent answer. These are all things you could say just to start a conversation. I put you on the spot right now. You had to just think of something. Students can have a week at home to consider it. And of course, the more you think about these things, the easier it becomes in a real life situation. So it's a good, yes, it is more written. It is about talking though. And the idea is just to train your brains into not freezing, but into actually being able to say something, anything, just not some awkward silence. Okay. That's the hope anyway, you never know. So has anyone got an answer for the riddle? What gets drier, what gets wetter the more it dries?
A towel.
Hey, excellent answer, very good. Anybody got anything else? Probably not, but okay.
Nope.
In that case, I will say thank you for listening. I'm done.